had the great privilege of getting to know and speak in front of thousands of people all over the country just because of past positions I've held. And I began to recognize certain patterns. And I believe that as humans, one of our superpowers is pattern recognition. It's allowed us to create everything that we have is pattern recognition, understanding how to put things together to create new things. And I began noticing these patterns. And one of the biggest patterns was that people simply weren't feeling good. What they were practiced at was feeling insecure, upset, angry, depressed, anxious, stressed out, worried. They were masterfully practiced at that. And that's just because that's how it's been modeled for us. We didn't sit down and say like, gosh, I'm really looking forward to being stressed out today. No. But we have been practicing it for years. And we become masters at it to the point that it happens without our permission, consent, or approval. These ways of being, they're operating without our consent. So the practice of feeling good is sitting down in the driver's seat of our life, taking the wheel and saying, how do I want to feel?
Welcome to Gratitude Geek. I'm Kandas Rodarte. Today I'm joined by the author of The Practice of Feeling Good, How to Upgrade Your Thinking and Live and Feel a Good Life, Fletcher Ellingson. Welcome, Fletcher.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kandas.
I am so excited to talk to you about this book, but before we do, tell us your story. How'd you get to where you are today?
Oh gosh, that was a long and winding road. But I've always been an entrepreneur since elementary school, paper route, then window washing business, and then all sorts of stuff. I was a professional magician, and that was fun. Then we had a manufacturing business, and then the latest chapter before what I'm doing now was kind of the one of the more interesting businesses. I was involved with a company, and what our company did was we brought to marketplace the ability for you and me and everyone else in the United States to go online and search for houses for sale or for rent. So so that technology, that IDX technology, before we, so our company was instrumental in bringing that. There were a few other companies doing it at the time too, but we were at the forefront and riding that wave, and it was revolutionary. I mean, before that, you could not go online and search for homes. So it was quite an interesting piece of technology. And so I traveled around the country promoting that and teaching people how to use it, and so that real estate professionals could, grow their business and stay with the times.
There are a lot of options to do that now. And it's been about 8 years since we bought a house. When we were shopping, we did a lot of online looking, and it would irritate our real estate agent because we never used his app. We always used one of the other apps. But his app wasn't as dynamic. I mean, there are some really good ones and there's some bad ones. I mean, there's a couple of them that are infamous for being overvaluated. Like, it says that your house is worth $50,000 or $60,000 more than it is, and so you get all excited. And then there's some that are just really good.
Yeah. So that was a fun ride, and now I'm doing what I'm doing now, which is helping people change the way they think in order to produce outstanding outcomes in their health, their wealth, and their relationships.
So how did you get from real estate to helping people?
Yeah, so I've always been a personal development junkie. I started reading Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking while I was in grade school. My father was very concerned about me. He was like, Fletcher, you are such an odd kid. But it fascinated me. We had a speaker come to our gymnasium when I was in like third or fourth grade. And he gave us some inspirational spiel. I don't remember all he said, but I do remember this. He gave every single one of us a sticker as we exited the gymnasium. And I put that sticker on my metal bed frame at home. And I saw the message of that sticker all the way through high school. And that sticker said, start your day with PMA, positive mental attitude, and expect something wonderful to happen. Oh. And believe it or not, Kandas, it was about 3 years ago, because it was during the pandemic. I tracked that speaker down. I didn't even know he was still living. But I had written this book, and I'd been on this, he put me on this trajectory of personal development. And so I actually got an opportunity to interview him on my podcast. And it was so fun to have this come full circle, because when I reached out, he was not expecting this. He'd never heard of me. But he had planted that seed, 30 or actually 40 years ago. And that seed, grew and produced. And so it was wonderful to bring that full circle with him.
I think what's his name?
Wayne Bredberg. He lives up in Alaska, and I mean, he's well into his 80s now.
I love that. I love that story, because you and I, before the show, were talking about episode 240, which is my interview with Bill Werlin, who was the president of the North Face when I worked there, and how it had been 30 years since I talked to him. And
yeah,
I was able to tell him how much of an impact he'd had on my life. But what you don't know, because it hasn't happened yet, is your episode 251. Well, it's episode 250, which I haven't recorded yet, but it's scheduled, is actually an interview with Alan Dibb, who is the author of the One-Page Marketing Plan. And I have been teaching my micropreneur clients his book for a decade now. And so I was talking about his book on another podcast, and I just was like, I should invite him to be a guest on the show. And he immediately said yes when I reached out to him.
Wonderful.
And but you know what? It's because I complimented him, and I told him how much of an effect he had on my career, right? And which is what you did.
Yes.
So when you reach back and tell people what an impact they had, that's a law of reciprocity right there,
Yeah, and what a wonderful practice, what a wonderful feel-good practice to gap backwards and notice people in your life who have made an impact, and then reach out to let them know that.
Mm-hmm.
I began doing that with a number of parents who were instrumental in my life, or influential, I should say, in my life as a teenager, because my father passed when I was in ninth grade, and so I was a latchkey kid, and some of the parents that I was involved with really took me under their wing, and so over the past few years, I've made it a point to call those parents, and now from an adult perspective, right, and say, wow, you really extended kindness to me, you showed you cared, you made a difference for me, and you had a full life. And so I just want to let you know that as an adult now, I get that, and I appreciate it. Thank you. It's such a great practice to do.
It is a great practice. I love that whole idea. Yeah, I did something similar with a teacher, my ninth grade English teacher. I reached out to him. I saw him comment on somebody's Facebook post, and I just sent him a message and told him how much I had learned from him, and how I had straight A's in college because of him. I mean, really, he taught me how to write an essay, and if you can write a good essay, you'll pass any class, right? And the essay was the foundation of a great speech too, because it's make a statement, tell a story, make a statement, tell a story. Well, that's basically what he taught us to do in an essay, right?
Nice.
So I went on to become a distinguished Toastmaster because of the formula that he taught us about how to write an essay.
That's so fun.
So yeah, reaching back and saying thank you is so important. And it makes them feel good, because chances are they would have forgotten. They might not, they're not going to forget you, because if they had taken the time to spend time with you, you made an impact on them then. But they might forget what they did.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, you got it.
And I had a kid once, I was a Girl Scout leader. And the kids were older. I was a leader for 10 years, and the kids were older. This might have been they were probably in high school at this point. And I had a minivan, and in the back of the minivan, I hear, "Do you remember when Miss Kandas gave the sandwich to the homeless person?" And I was like, "I don't remember giving the sandwich to the homeless person," but it made an impact on her, and then everybody else in the car remembered.
Yeah.
So hopefully they're kind and compassionate towards people that they learned.
Kindness is one of my favorite things, right? I mean, in my opinion, if we learned to be kind, it would just simply heal the world. Because the way I define kindness is generosity, friendliness, consideration, and being willing to offer assistance without the need for praise or recognition. If we could do that, oh boy, it would just simply heal the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it would. And the not needing the recognition is the important part. I think
Exactly.
that is why the term people pleaser irritates me.
Mm.
Because being kind doesn't mean you're a people pleaser. Being kind means that you're a kind person. And a lot of
Yes.
folks will call you a people pleaser if you're kind,
Yeah,
you know.
it's not about looking for that praise or recognition. It's simply the understanding like kindness creates workability, and we're seeing humanity, and we're just like we're operating out of a place of genuine concern, generosity, and friendliness.
So let's talk about your book.
All right.
The movie The Secret. My sister sent me the movie right after it came out. So I don't, what was that, 20 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
It's been a while. So my sister sends me the movie, and at the very end of the movie, and I had the version with Abraham Hicks, which so it was the very first iteration of the movie. The very end of the movie, I can't remember the name of the woman who created the movie, but at the very end of the movie, she writes in the sand, "Feel good." And I think most people miss that piece of The
I
Secret.
forgot about that.
But you wrote the book. So let's talk about the practice of feeling good.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, and I've had the great privilege of getting to know and speak in front of thousands of people all over the country just because of past positions I've held. And I began to recognize certain patterns. And I believe that as humans, one of our superpowers is pattern recognition. It's what it's allowed us to create everything that we have is pattern recognition, understanding how to put things together to create new things. And I began noticing these patterns. And one of the biggest patterns was that people simply weren't feeling good. What they were practiced at was feeling insecure, upset, angry, depressed, anxious, stressed out, worried. They were masterfully practiced at that. And that's just because that's how it's been modeled for us. We didn't sit down and say like, gosh, I'm really looking forward to being stressed out today. No. But we have been practicing it for years, and we become masters at it to the point that it happens without our permission, consent, or approval. These ways of being, they're operating without our consent. So the practice of feeling good is sitting down in the driver's seat of our life, taking the wheel and saying, how do I want to feel? Do I want to continue to feel stressed, worried, insecure, or are there other ways? So when I say practice of feeling good, I don't even mean happy. In fact, it's a term I rarely use. Nothing wrong with it, but when I say feeling good, good is the umbrella term. And under that umbrella are feelings like feeling connected, feeling secure, feeling safe, feeling optimistic, feeling eager or enthusiastic, feeling excited, right? Feeling creative, collaborative. There's so many ways of feeling good. And Kandas, we all love to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
It's whether people are aware of it or not, it's a statement that comes out of our mouth frequently. This massage feels so good. Oh, this hot tub feels so good. Oh, this sun feels so good, right?
Mm-hmm.
We use that term a lot. We love feeling good and we want more of it. But what we don't understand, or many of us don't understand, is that we can feel good on demand.
Yeah.
We really can, but it is a practice.
Mm-hmm.
And so this book is really an outline of some simple things we can do to begin to upgrade our thinking in order to do that. Because I use the term upgrade, and I use the analogy or the example of our iPhones, or
Androids,
laptops, Androids, whatever. But they all have an operating system.
Mm-hmm.
And that operating system, as we know, reminds us periodically, like, hey, there's going to be an iOS upgrade. So put your phone on to charger so we can upgrade the operating system. So we have devices all around us that frequently upgrade themselves. So my question for your listeners is, when's the last time you sat down and said, I'm going to intentionally upgrade the operating system that runs my life, that runs my thinking, right?
So I think that I do it often because I consume self-help, well, not self-help, but professional
Yes.
development books, and I listen to
Yes.
podcasts, and I watch educational videos in my field. So
Hmm.
I think I'm upgrading often.
Yes.
Are there other ways to do it?
So that's a wonderful way, and that's like probably the dominant way to do it, right? The We'll take it one step further, and I assume you do this as well, but there's also like these intentional practices. So it's more than just consuming the content, hearing it, but like then the application of, right? So the easiest example is to like come up with identify a disempowering belief, and then really do the work to swap out that belief with a new belief that you don't even believe yet, right? But you identify a belief that you want to have so that you can get new outcomes. And that's where the actual application and the work comes in, and that's where it gets really exciting. I mean, I love personal development too, obviously, and consume a lot of it, and it's fun to have those insights. It's it's thrilling though when we begin to apply and really produce new outcomes.
Hmm. So are you going to give us some tips?
Yeah, let's run your listeners through a way to begin to set up a new belief. It's a 5-step process, and I've studied with a lot of great people in this field, like Tony Robbins and David Bayer and Abraham Hicks, and just to name just a few, Bob Proctor. But my methodology is heavily influenced by them, and I put my own spin on it. But let's go through this 5-step process of identifying a disempowering belief and then setting up a new one that feels good. One that a lot of people have, they'll have a disempowering belief around time, and one of the common beliefs that people have is there's not enough time. There's never enough time. I don't have enough time. Now, the thing about that is that belief doesn't feel good in the body. It doesn't feel good, does it?
Mm-mm.
And I've said it. I used to believe it. I was practiced at saying that and proclaiming it. God, there's never enough time. I can't do that. I don't have enough time as it is, right? So what we want to look at, the first thing is we want to ask this question. Does the belief that you just said, does it feel good in the body?
Mm-mm.
And if the answer is no, then we're going to make a bold declaration. And we go to step 2, we're going to make this bold declaration. The bold declaration is it must not be accurate. Now, that's a simple statement, but it's profound because we're now beginning to call into question this belief that we've felt so certain about. And by the way, a belief is simply a feeling of certainty. It doesn't mean it's accurate. So we call into question. In fact, we audaciously and boldly declare that belief must not be accurate. And then we go to step 3, and step 3 says, if it's not accurate, some form of the opposite is likely accurate. Now, this is where it gets really uncomfortable for people because I have gone through my entire life believing and telling people there is not enough time. Okay. So now what I'm going to say, some form of the opposite of that is accurate. It feels weird in the body, but stay with me. And so in step 4, we say what the opposite of that is. Well, what's the opposite of there's not enough time?
There's plenty of time.
There's plenty of time. Oh my gosh, what a revelation! Right now, you and I may feel like you and I may already have that belief that there's plenty of time, but many of the people out in the world, they don't have that belief. There's not enough time, right? Always looking for more time. So for them, it might be like, whoa, that is incredible to consider that there's enough time. And now what I like to do is tweak that a little bit and say, there's always enough time for the things that are important to me. There's always enough time for the things that are important to me.
That is exactly correct. You know?
Right. It's more accurate, isn't it?
Hmm.
It's more accurate than the statement there's not never enough time because as intellectually we can see like that doesn't even make sense that there's not enough time. All there is time. All there
Hmm.
has been is time. All there will ever be is time,
And
right?
it really is the one commodity.
Yes, exactly. We all have the same amount of time in a day.
Hmm.
So we can see intellectually that old belief, it's not even intelligent, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. So this new belief that we want to set up, now it's not a belief yet because it doesn't feel certain. It's a belief that we want to feel certain about. So there's always enough time for the things that are important to me. Now we go to step 5, and this is where we actually begin to clinch it and to begin to set up some certainty about it. So what we do is we look to gather massive evidence to support this new belief. So how do we do that? Well, we look at everything in our world. Oh, do I always make time to pay my mortgage? Yeah, I do. Do I always make time to make my tea in the morning, even if I'm running behind? Yes, I do. Do I always make time to, well, in our household, we always make time to make the bed in the morning. Always make time for that. We always make time to, you name it, right? But what you can see, what we're doing is we're gathering evidence and we're showing that, oh yeah, there's always enough time for the things that actually are important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels good. And then, so now it's not a belief yet, but repetition is the mother of skill, right? And so this is why I have incantations or affirmations for every part of my life. And this is one of them. There's always enough time for the things that are important to me, right? So that I've said it so many times that it's actually impossible for me to go back to my old belief system. The old belief that I used to have, like there's not enough time, now looks like a joke. It's laughable. I can't actually feel certain about the old belief. My brain has been brainwashed, so to speak. It's been reprogrammed. And now the only belief about time that makes sense to me is like, oh yeah, there's always enough time for the things that are important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels good.
So I can't help but be devil's advocate here. This episode is being recorded 2 months before it's released. So the election in the United States has already happened. We have a new president, or we've elected a new president, and all that is over. So we're recording this. I need to put time into the context here. We're recording this on October 2nd. And on October 1st, the dock workers around the country went on strike.
Yes.
And I cannot tell you how many people posted on social that P. Diddy's arrest was a bait and switch so that we wouldn't be paying attention to the dock worker strike. The reason why I'm saying that is because it's exactly in their mind, they had to come up with the reason why something was going on.
Yes.
So, and so many people, and I'm sure that they got it from somebody, but so many people kept repeating this. And to me, it's conspiracy theory, malarkey, right? That's what I believe. But so how do we, as a society, how do we reconcile other than taking responsibility for our own feelings? But how do we reconcile that?
How do you reconcile? You mean like these? Tell me more.
I guess So as you were talking, I just got this image in my head of all these people who are coming up with reasons why it was a bait and switch.
Mm-hmm.
They were writing the story about how it was all this big cover up. And it's so many people. I mean, it wasn't just one or two people. It was a lot of people. And I try to limit the conspiracy theorists on my channels. I spend a lot of time unfollowing folks if they get too conspiratorial, right? To see it all happen all on the same day. It was just, they wrote a story. Somebody must have like planted the seed for the story. But as a society, how do we get over that? How can we fix it so that we stop coming up with these far-reaching, I don't know, you might not even agree with me, but.
Well, I do hear something we can address in what you're saying.
Okay,
and I think
good. Because I don't know if I'm saying what I'm feeling.
Yeah, I think at the core of this, because what you're talking about, I hear that it's kind of upsetting to you. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's frustrating because I think as Americans we should be better than that.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's concerning. It can be annoying. It can be discouraging. And so here's what I've come to how to handle news. I'm really selective about what I let get into my world because so much of the news doesn't feel good to me.
Yeah.
For years and years, I would start my day off with the news because I thought I was like being responsible. And And so I would start it off with news. I mean, I'd be shaving, listening to news. And then Candace, I would leave the bathroom after I'm done getting ready for the day. And guess how I was feeling?
Crappy.
Totally crappy, pissed off. And here's what I would literally do. I would go into the kitchen and to my wife, Amy, I would say, babe, you know what I just heard? And now I would dump all of my disempowering emotion onto my wife.
Yeah.
Who's like looks like, what are you? It's like I just attacked her or something, right? She's shocked and dismayed, and like she's like, why are you telling me all of this? And so I realized that I was caught up in this cycle, and a cycle that didn't feel good. And so years ago, I stopped listening to the news, reading the newspapers. Now, a lot of people say, well, gosh, Fletcher, that doesn't seem very responsible. How are you going to keep up with the times? Oh, gosh. The news that I'm actually interested in finds its way to me. And so I keep up with current events. I still write my Congress people. I vote, I'm active, but I'm not scouring all of the different channels, and I'm not starting my day with that. Because it just would wreck my morning. It didn't feel good. And It's important for me to start my day feeling good.
Well, and a lot of people who are reporting try to make you, emotion sells, so they try to make you feel a certain way. This is not a sponsored post. This is not a sponsored thing, but I actually use the app Ground News. Because it curates a story. It tells you if it's left-leaning, right-leaning, or center-leaning in terms of how it's being covered. And then you can scroll through and you can read all of the headlines related to that story and then pick the version that you want to read. And it's very interesting, the different versions of the same story.
That is fascinating.
It also tells you which version of the story came from the most centrist.
Yeah.
So that you can read the one that's not skewed politically, right or left, which is very interesting that sometimes you end up reading the article that's written from another country.
Oh, yeah, fascinating.
But you can tell the app, and I have the free version. I don't have the paid version. There is a paid version, but you can tell the app what you're interested in. So it gives me the top headlines that I'm interested in, so that I can scroll through and say, "Oh, wow, okay, that's what's going on here." And or if I hear about something like the dock worker strike, because I didn't hear about it, I only saw it on social, so I was like, I need the facts. So then I went to the Ground News app to find out what the scoop was. So I'm really because I want to know the news. I'm politically involved. You know, I've always been interested in what's going on in the world globally, and I don't want to disconnect from the news, but I also don't want to be pissed off all the time.
Yeah, yeah. And it's called Ground app?
Ground It's called Ground News.
Cool. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
But what I think you're getting at, Candace, that's really important and relevant to our conversation and the practice of feeling good is where we place our focus, that's what we feel, right? So whatever you focus on, you feel. And that's more than just a meme on Facebook.
Yeah.
Like chemically in the brain, right? So I'll give you this example, which I give in the book. But if you go to the movie theater, for instance, and you get there, you grab your soda and your popcorn or whatever, and you sit down and the movie comes up, and let's say it's a really intense action drama movie, and it starts off with a bang, like a car chase, and there's lots of loud noise, lots of action, and lots of lights. Like your eyes are big. You're not eating or drinking right now because you're like glued to the screen. And in fact, if we could monitor your heart rate, we'd see that, oh gosh, your heart rate has spiked, right? And then, 10 minutes go by and things calm down. Your heart rate comes down. Now you're enjoying your popcorn. And then there's something funny that happens and you're laughing really hard. And then down the road later, you're crying or tearing up when something happens to the protagonist. And then at the end, there's the big final climax and you're like, yeah, that was awesome. And, you leave that movie that you've been watching for 2 hours, and it's entirely possible, especially for men, that we've just experienced a wild roller coaster road of emotions, more emotions than we usually experience an entire week. Okay. But here's the deal. We were having an emotional reaction to light and sound being broadcast on a screen. It's not real. It's not even, I mean, it's a fictitious movie, but we were having emotional reactions. So
we were being manipulated.
yeah, well, this is how we go through life every single day. Wherever you put your focus, here's what the brain must do. See, the brain's not judging where you're placing your focus. It only knows this. Oh, Kandas is putting her focus over here. So we have to create a chemical reaction called an emotion that aligns with the story that she's focused on. And this is why we can go in and out of different emotional reactions very quickly when we're watching a television program, because the brain says, oh, she's focused on that now. Oh, no, she's focused on that. So it's constantly mixing up the chemicals. So you have this thing called an emotion. If that's what happens during a movie, my question to your audience is this: what if we became really intentional about where we put our focus? What if we decided, I want to feel connected more of the day? What would I have to focus on? I want to feel more inspired during the day. What would I have to focus on? We're really getting the keys to the kingdom here in this conversation, because the thing that everybody wants to do is they want to feel good. If you want to feel good, pay attention to where you're putting your focus.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let's shift gears. Let's talk about values. So you say that values don't mean jack. What do you mean?
Yeah, values don't mean jack. Hate to break it to you, but they don't mean jack. And I know a lot of people, when they hear me say that, they're gonna be like, "What, Fletcher? You don't know what you're talking about. This guy's off his rocker." But let's just take a quick look at it.
We'll define values first.
Let me save that piece. Let me save that piece for a moment.
Okay.
Because that's a great question. But we all love values, and I'm not saying there's nothing valuables. It's a good discussion to have for sure. But people who are single, for instance, they'll tell me, "Well, Fletcher, I really want to meet somebody. But I want to meet somebody who shares my same values." Okay. Or companies will take retreats, and they'll spend a lot of money on retreats, and they'll say, "We're going to identify our core values, and then we're going to come back. We're going to all be on the same page, and we're going to really kick some butt." Well, here's what I'd like you to consider. We all have the exact same values with very few exceptions. Just check my thinking here. Kandas, do you value freedom?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you value creativity?
Yes, absolutely.
Collaboration?
Yep.
Do you value family?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you value financial stability?
Yes.
Do you value health and vitality?
Yes.
Okay. Do you value loyalty?
Yes.
Okay. So we can go on and on and on, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now, as it happens, I also value those same things.
Mm-hmm.
And so does the mafia and every crime syndicate on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you and I, we share the exact same values as the mafia and every crime syndicate on the planet.
Yep.
Now, some people at this point, they're going to say, like, "What are you talking about, Fletcher? They don't value honesty." Oh, yes, they do. Within their group, within their family. Loyalty, they may value loyalty even more than some of us, right? Because if you're not loyal, you're out.
Now I see where the definition's coming in.
Yes. So you can see we have the same values as every company, Nike, Starbucks, Amazon. I don't care who it is. They all have the same values. Now, there's nothing wrong with these values, but they don't move the needle.
Yeah.
You see, if you would have asked me, 20 years ago, if I valued financial stability, I would have said, "Of course I do, Kandas." But if you would have looked in my bank account, you would have seen a big fat zero or even a negative. Okay. Values don't move the needle. Values are simply an indicator of preference. And there's the definition. Values indicate what you prefer. Like, I prefer health and vitality, but look at my diet or look at my exercise or look at what there may not be an alignment there, right? Money, honesty. I mean, if you would have asked me, like, "Fletcher, do you value honesty?" Of course I do. But for most of my life, I lied a lot, right? not these colossal lies. They were just lies to you so I didn't get in trouble.
Yeah.
Lies of omission, right?
Well, a lot of times we're lying to ourselves too.
Absolutely, right? So then the question becomes, well, if and by the way, the single people who are out there who are like, gosh, I want to find somebody who shares my same values. You didn't narrow down the dating pool. You just opened it up to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if the values don't move the needle and they're just simply indicators of preference, then the question really is what moves the needle? What should we be focusing on? And the answer to that is our standards.
Ah, good answer.
Yeah, because standards literally breathe life into the values. Our standards, like for instance, several years ago, I wound up in the emergency room. I had excruciating pain in my side. I could barely walk. I mean, when my friends came to take me to the ER, I was on the floor in a puddle. I couldn't move, excruciating pain, and I didn't know what was wrong. I'm like, am I going to die? Because it felt like it.
Mm-hmm.
When I got to the hospital and they ran their tests, one of the healthcare providers came in and they said, so Fletcher, I just have a few questions for you. The first one is, do you drink any water? And I was like, what do you mean, do I drink any water? I was like, you're extremely dehydrated and you've developed kidney stones as a result of that. And I was like, and so they asked me again, so like, how much water do you drink a day? I couldn't answer that. I had no idea because I had zero standards around the consumption of water. And here I am, and I'm an athletic guy. I'm out there sweating and not even paying attention to this area of my life. I see everybody else drinking water and they have their flasks of water that they carry around with them. Not me. Never, just didn't make it onto my radar somehow.
Interesting.
And yeah.
That's very unusual for an athlete.
I'm weird, right? So, so now, but you can see I've got my glass of water. Why? Because now I have a standard.
Yeah.
My standard is that I drink a minimum of 50 ounces of water a day. Now, some people say, gosh, Fletcher, that's not very much. Well, my minimum. It's my standard. It's my minimum. Anything above that is a bonus, right? But if you can't articulate your standards, I encourage you to really bring some focus and attention to that. Because we have standards around everything. Again, finances. I used to, be behind in payments on certain things, not because I was a slacker or didn't care, just like I had some financial hardships at different points in my life. But now, if you go down to the PUD or the county or the city business center here for water, sewer, garbage, if you look at my account, I'm paid up anywhere between 3 and 6 months ahead. Why? Because my standard is to always be paid ahead. Now they laugh at me because I always frequently go in there and pay with cash, and they'll be like, "Put this on my account," and they'll be like, "You're paid up 4 months ahead." I was like, "Yes, I do. It sure feels good." And one of them asked me one time, like, "Why are you paid up ahead?" I said, "Well, gosh, you just never know what's going to happen in the world. I mean, maybe something terrible happens, and then it was funny because like a year later, then there was the world shut down, right?
Yeah.
But my standard is to be paid ahead. So I invite your audience to get curious. Can you name some of your standards? Can you articulate some of your standards? If you can't, it's not a bad thing, but there's great empowerment in knowing what your standards are.
Oh yeah. I want to go backwards for a little bit. The value of freedom. So a friend of mine was running for public office and she asked me to look at her marketing, and she was talking about in her marketing about the freedoms, that we want to maintain our freedoms. And when I heard that word, I thought guns, freedom of speech, I thought of those freedoms. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And she said, I don't want this city council telling me what to do with my land. And I'm like, okay, then we need to articulate that is where your platform is, because saying freedom isn't going to explain that that's what your platform is.
Right.
So that's a thing about values. In her mind, her value of freedom was that she owned her land and she wanted to be able to do whatever she wanted with it. And for other people, that's not what freedom means, right? Freedom, so that the value of freedom means different things to different people. Exactly. So right there is a very tangible example of values don't mean squat, because
yeah. Exactly.
Our definition of the value could be vastly different.
Yes, exactly. And so it's a great conversation. I mean, and your listeners don't have to agree with me, but I think it's just a great place to begin to get curious about some of these concepts because they really do impact our lives on a daily basis.
Oh, yeah. We have covered a lot today, but is there anything that you want to talk about that we haven't talked about?
You know, the thing I always love to end with is the thing about we said kindness, you know, and I just really invite people to consider that in their life. Like, who are kind people in my life? Who has modeled kindness to me? When have I been a recipient of it? And where do I stack up in that? Like, how active am I? Is kindness a standard for my life? Not just a value, but is it a standard? And if it's a standard, like, can you point to where you are being intentionally kind when you're living into that value? I invite you to make kindness a standard, meaning like, it might mean like I smile, I might hold the door, or I get curious about people, I engage people, I go out of my way to make sure people feel considered, because kindness highlights people's strengths instead of reminding of their weaknesses, and it unites people instead of dividing people, and it feels good to give, it feels good to receive it, and it feels good to be around it. So I invite your listeners to really consider the standard of kindness in their lives.
And it's contagious.
And it's contagious. It totally is, isn't it?
If you smile at somebody, they smile at you.
Yeah.
If you start laughing, one of my favorite memories of my childhood, my friend Sharon and I were at our mutual friend Mary's. I'd never been there before. I don't even know why we were all three there. But we were standing in Mary's closet, laughing uncontrollably. I have no idea what we were laughing about, but I will never forget being in that moment with those two people. And that those two people just mean so much to me because of that moment in time. Because we could not stop laughing. Who knows what we were laughing about?
It feels good, right?
Yeah, it felt so good. And whenever I think of Mary or I think of Sharon, I get warm fuzzies.
Right on.
You know?
Exactly.
So it's not too hard to just smile at people, right?
Yeah.
Just share your smile with them and they'll smile back at you.
Yeah, and acknowledge people for something in their life. Like, for instance, for you, Kandas, I want to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you for being a source of kindness and contribution in our community. I mean, what you're doing here, you're on episode 251. I mean, there's been a significant amount of effort that you have put into this. And why? Because it's important to you that people feel good, that they learn that you are committed to diminishing the suffering in the world. And so I acknowledge you for that and thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I consider it a privilege to host this show because I have met some incredible people. When I was 17 years old, I met this man named Guy, and he was a friend of my Aunt Rita's. And up until that moment, everybody called me Candy. But I was I'm a very intelligent woman. And he said to me, you know, Candy isn't a very mature name. And I immediately switched over to Kandas. So I went back to 12th grade and I said, stop calling me Candy, call me Kandas. And my husband never even considered calling me that. I mean, I met him 10 years later, but my husband never even considered calling me Candy. It never even occurred to him to call me that because I am Kandas. But Kandas and Candy are two different people. They're two different, you know, the perception that you have with one name is the perception that you have is a different. They're just different. Neither is bad. They're just, they're two different names, same name, different people, right? Or, you know, so anyway, Guy is now the director of the Vatican Observatory, and he was a guest on the podcast. And I was able to talk to him about his experience working for the Pope and all that. And I was also able to thank him for giving me my name.
Oh, that's fun.
And that is, I mean, that's just one story about all the amazing things that happened because I said yes to the concept of being a podcast host. And it was my husband's idea. I started doing a YouTube video, a talk show, and my husband buys me all this podcasting equipment and says do a podcast. And I said, okay.
I love it. I love
and
it.
Here I am.
And you picked such a great title for it, right? Gratitude Geek. I love it.
Thank you. It's the two things that I love the most. Being a geek
right on.
and gratitude. You know what? I want to spend a couple of minutes on this because before we started recording, you told me about a particular virtual reality video game that you play. And I want you to share it with the audience because I didn't know this existed.
Yeah. So I don't know if your listeners can see this as well, but Kandas has some images of Star Wars behind her on the wall. And I was like, oh gosh, I wonder if she's played Vader Immortal on MetaQuest, the virtual reality. And she said she hadn't. And so I don't know if any other Star Wars fans out there, I'm sure there are, but if you haven't, this is a highlight in my life, playing this game. And I know it sounds silly. I don't play a lot of video games, but I play this one on a regular basis because it is so much fun. I told Kandas, I've been wanting to hold and use a real lightsaber since I saw Star Wars, right? When I was in elementary school. And with this game, it looks, feels, sounds just like you are in the movie. You are interacting with stormtroopers and all sorts of droids and doing this intense battle with you're using the Force, right? It is, and you actually get to come nose to nose with Darth Vader. And it is absolutely thrilling. I highly recommend it.
Technology is evolving so rapidly and so quickly, and there's some things that might be a little scary. Some people say what you will about AI. Some people don't like it. Some people love it. But virtual reality, now that they've created that game, the next 10 years are going to be amazing with the technology that things that you and I can't even think of right now are going to be in existence in 10 years.
Yes.
We are in an amazing time to be alive. Much like it was in the early 1900s. We went from having no airplanes to dropping bombs out of airplanes in 20 years.
Yes.
Not that that's a good thing, but
right. It just shows radical.
Yeah.
Radical and rapid changes. And you're right. That's exactly what's happening now. We're living at the most advanced time in the history of our species. And it's very exciting.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. All right. We need to wrap up. I hate that we have to. Please come back. Can you come back on the show?
I'd love to. Absolutely.
We'll have to book you for next year.
Okay.
So this is your moment of gratitude. Fletcher Ellingson, for whom or what are you most grateful?
For the gift of life that I get to experience it.
Thanks for tuning in to Gratitude Geek, the podcast for grateful micropreneurs building genuine, lasting relationships with clients, colleagues, and community. Our theme music is track 14 by Rev Brock and Soul Lily. To connect with Fletcher Ellingson, head over to the show notes at gratitudegeek.com. This is episode 251. I've been your host, Kandas Rodarte. Stay groovy, my friends.
Stay groovy.